Hello friends, it's Sajid and today I'm going to be bringing you an installment of book reviews. Just to let you know, all of the reviews that I will be doing today are spoiler free, and if you would like to skip to a particular review, I will leave the time intervals for you to click on in the description down below. Matilda by Roald Dahl is a middle grade magical realism book about a young girl named Matilda who is so brilliant to the point where one might even consider her a child prodigy. Unfortunately, she has horrible parents who do not care about her abilities and they mistreat her and are very cruel towards her. But Matilda is a trooper and she copes with her reality by going to the library and getting lost in a bunch of books, which is something that she loves to do. She eventually starts primary school where she has to deal with another horrible adult, Headmistress Trunchbull. The overall story was quite enjoyable and I really like how we followed Matilda as she found different ways to get back at her parents and Miss Trunchbull. And the relationship that developed between Matilda and Miss Honey was such a heartwarming pleasure to watch. I was especially impressed by how this book took on a sort of underlying discussion on the power dynamics of adulthood and how some adults feel just because they're older or they're grown up means that they can belittle and take advantage of children. That whole idea I think made for a really good story. In fact, the only bump that I had in this story was the fact that the telekinetic thing came out of nowhere. I know that this is a magical realism book and the fantasy element is not really supposed to be explained or fully understood. I felt like if it just randomly popped out of nowhere, I mean like 2/3 of the way through the book and I was like, oh, okay, cute. I would have to say that I really particularly enjoyed Dahl's writing. His storytelling and his setting is always on point, but I would say that this book's strong point would have to be its ability to evoke certain feelings for different characters. And the characters themselves, to me, are the best part of this story. Mosquitoland is a young adult contemporary about 16-year-old Mim who lives with her father and stepmother in Jackson, Mississippi. Upon hearing that her real mother recently fell ill, she embarks on a spontaneous road trip to Cleveland, Ohio, where she is hospitalized. Of course, along the way there are detours and a cast of characters and a whole bunch of other road trip story necessities. I would say that I liked the concept and enjoyed the overall story. The author did a really good job at fleshing out an interesting plot, and I love how the whole thing was driven by one girl's determination and love for her mother. However, there were some problems. In one of my previous videos when I was currently reading this book, I mentioned that the writing was horrible. I want to sort of take that back and say that the writing itself was okay, but what the author tried to do with it was the problem. You can clearly see the effort to make it sound profound and thought-provoking, but in reality, it just wasn't. I don't know, it just came across as pretentious and trying too hard. I mean, like, whilst reading it, you will randomly run into like these disjointed bootleg Tumblr quotes and it's like, girl, what? I found most of the characters to be kind of flat and to lack a bit of dimension. And that's not to say that the author doesn't have the ability to properly develop characters, but it's just that he tried too hard to focus on this one aspect of Mim. Mim was undoubtedly constructed to come across as this hipster, cool, rebellious Margot Roth Spiegelman type person. Those efforts, honestly speaking, only translated into her being an arrogant brat who thinks she's better than everyone. I mean, this book was so oversaturated with that sort of attitude that I literally had to stop reading it at some points. One of the main themes of this story is mental illness, and I felt as though as if at some points this book really carelessly and inappropriately dealt with that in the way that certain characters were portrayed and how things were said at times. I'm talking specifically about Walter, who was blatantly used as comic relief throughout this book, and at one point, the main character and her love interest even referred to him as their pet. Their pet. Pet. In fact, there was a scene where they literally took him to a veterinarian. A vet. A vet. And to top it all off, there was the whole war paint thing, which was basically immense appropriation of Native American cultures, and what's worse is that not only did this book sort of like glorify that sort of behavior, but it encouraged it as well.
Don't know what I mean? Look at half of the reviews on YouTube for this book and you will see exactly what I'm talking about.
George by Alex Gino is a middle grade contemporary which tells the story of young 10-year-old Melissa who is transgender. We follow Melissa as she goes through the motions of being trans, the desire to see things, wear things, do things that she can't, being torn between what she wants to be or what she feels versus what people expect of her or what people think of her, as well as dealing with that one pivotal moment of opening up to the people that you love. All of those things are reflected in the main event of this story, where Melissa wants to play Charlotte in her school's rendition of Charlotte's Web. Her teachers are very much against it, so together with her friend Kelly, they devise a plan to make it happen. It was a great experience reading the story of someone like Melissa, who basically reflects what millions of children are going through on a day-to-day basis. I admired her positivity, her strength, and her ability to break free from the molds that everyone expects her to occupy. And I think it's really important for everyone to read and reflect on these kinds of books, because we think we know what someone is going through, and we think we know what they're thinking, and we think we know what they're feeling, when in reality, we don't. And the fact that this book was written by a trans author makes the experience of it all the more authentic. One of my favorite aspects of this novel, though, was the friendship between Melissa and Kelly. Kelly is such a loyal, accepting, supportive, and incredibly headstrong person who's not just there to be the complimentary best friend, but rather has her own place in this story. She gives Melissa a push whenever she needs it, she's always there for her, and basically we all need a Kelly in our life.
Shout out to Rainbow Sky Child.
In Inside Out and Back Again by Than Halai, we follow the story of 10-year-old Ha, who moves from South Vietnam to the United States, specifically Alabama, in 1975 with her family during the war. This story meticulously documents the things that stick with you as a child, whether it be something small like remembering someone's facial expressions, or something huge like getting on a ship in the middle of the night and fleeing your country. At such a pivotal point in her life, Ha is taken away from everything that she knows, everything that she's accustomed to, everything that she finds comfort in, and is suspended in a world that is totally distant from her, not just physically, but emotionally, spiritually, and everything. I would say that this story really captures a true essence of what it was like to be an immigrant at that time, as the author herself moved from Vietnam during the 1975 war at the age of 10. The whole concept of the language barrier, I think, was really explored well in this book, as Ha lets known the struggles of learning English in its intricacies and complexities and various rules and strange enunciations. Lai also paints a very vivid picture of the kind of ignorance and insensitivity that people like Ha have to face when interacting with other people. Allow me to reinsert a clip from before.
And I think it's really important for everyone to read and reflect on these kinds of books, because we think we know what someone is going through, and we think we know what they're thinking, and we think we know what they're feeling, when in reality, we don't.
What's most interesting about this book to me is actually the way that it's written, and that is through free verse. Now, I really feel like childhood stories are done so much justice when they are told in free verse or poetry, because those writing styles to me really do capture the cognitive essence of being a kid. And also, in the words of Kathy Appelt, who blurbed the back of this book, the thin line of prose itself mirrors the thin line that Ha walks on during that year. And I don't think I could have explained that in a more effective way. All in all, this book was thebomb.com. I can't believe I just fucking said that. And that's a wrap for my first installment of book reviews. In the comments down below, definitely let me know your thoughts on these books, whether you've read them or not. Thank you all so much for watching, and until next time, inshallah, keep reading.